Hello, everybody, and welcome to our latest episode of the Cantina Club. On this episode, we're going to discuss Easter eggs from the movie Solo, a Star Wars story. I know there's been a lot of posts on the internet about all this stuff, so we've kind of compiled our own list, and we're just going to kind of run through them point by point and kind of discuss a few here and there. So stay tuned and enjoy.
We all know round here, Solo always does shots first. Singing yup no, raise your glass and sing yup no. Sing it with me, yup no. At the Cantina Club.
Transmission commencing.
Okay. I took a lot of notes on Easter eggs from the film and collected them over a long time period because I've seen the film, I guess, 6 times now. And I first noticed when looking online doing some research on Easter eggs that Nerdist had published an article that listed 35. What? And I ended up finding a lot more.
What?
I just wanted to show you what I've been using to collect.
What have we?
Very nice.
Impressive.
This is a gift
Very cool.
No, it's not.
from
It's awesome.
a buddy for Christmas, Han Solo notebook. And so I've got pages of Easter eggs from the film, and we'll just run through a few of them real quickly, and if you guys come up with any additional, you can stop me. I thought we could start with callbacks to the original trilogy because the movie is just filled with them, and the more often you watch it, the more you pick up on. The most obvious are some of the dialogue references, like whenever Kira and Han are trying to get away from Corellia and they're in the spaceport and you hear the stormtroopers saying, "Move along."
Move along.
Yeah, to everybody trying to get out. Or Han and Lando, when Lando says, "I hate you," and Han says, "I know," when they're looking at the Falcon that's been crashed.
I think I got
it. Absolutely, yeah.
So you get obvious dialogue.
Sorry about the mess.
In terms of music, you notice the 2 important uses of the Imperial March, right?
Right, at the recruitment center.
Yeah, Darth Vader's
correct.
Imperial March, whenever Han is thinking about joining up with the Empire to try to get away from Corellia, you see the big propaganda message running on the screens, and you hear Darth Vader's Imperial March in a major key, which is really cool. Whenever they're inviting people to become part of something bigger, to join the Empire. But then we cut to what is it, the Imperial officer who recruits him tells him, "We'll have you flying in no time," and then he's literally flying through the air, being blown up as an infantryman.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
March in the actual minor key. So
Right.
That was a cool usage of original
Good
score.
work. Okay.
Corellian, you had mentioned callbacks to the original scores, like Asteroid Field, TIE Fighter Attack, things like that.
Right, yeah, the asteroid field, it seems to me they're almost like trying to turn it into the Millennium Falcon theme.
It'll work.
Because I noticed it at least once during the when they were trying to escape from the mall, towards the end during the Kessel Run. There was at least one little short excerpt of it in there, and something tells me I want to say it happened earlier, but at this point it's been about a month since I've seen it. It's getting a little fuzzy.
Yeah, there was a second spot in the movie where they used that. I noticed. I can't remember where it was.
Yeah, that came from the Empire Strikes Back score, right?
That is correct.
The asteroid field. But then you get even the bit whenever they see the Star Destroyer in the midst of the maelstrom. Remember when the Star Destroyer is revealed?
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that from A New Hope?
You get the Death Star revelation music then. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
That usually go. Then it cuts to the interior of the Death Star where something's going on.
Right.
They use that music, and they just put that in there as a callback when the Star Destroyer, when they look up and everybody sees the Star Destroyer in front of them. Yeah. In Solo.
That's pretty cool. And then, of course, the TIE fighter attack from whenever the TIE fighters are chasing them. So all of those are nice callbacks to John Williams' original score. Scores for the original trilogy. What about gestures and actions by some of the characters? Greedo mentioned one that I didn't pick up on with the android L3.
I have a really bad feeling about this.
Because L3 gets downloaded into the Millennium Falcon.
What are you talking about?
At the end of the film. And he mentioned...
Spoilers, by the way.
Yeah, he mentioned...
We should say this is all going to have spoilers in it, of course. I mean,
I think if we're talking about Easter eggs, it's kind of inherent.
Yeah, exactly. It's over a month since the movie came out. So yeah.
But what about that? It connects to the original trilogy.
Well, the moment when on Hoth, when Han slaps or punches the Falcon to get it to turn back on, when the cockpit turns off and he hits it and it comes back on, which was originally just a funny kind of way to say that the Falcon is held together with spit and tape or whatever.
Duct tape, yeah.
Right.
It'll work.
And they kind of show that as an original fault or whatever of that droid that gets transplanted into the Falcon.
Popping herself to try to...
Right,
okay,
exactly. Although that was a good tie-in.
Yeah. And then there was also in Empire, C-3PO mentioned the ship having a peculiar dialect.
No better than to trust a strange computer.
Now we assume that came from L3. So
Malfunctioning little
you're getting callbacks like that. And then finally, the other fun ones are like Chewie ripping the arms off of the guy in the attack, and then Chewie playing the hologram chess game.
They even have the same move in the hologram game.
Chewie repeats the same move.
Yeah, it does the same move.
Right. He hasn't learned.
Shocking.
That's his go-to move. He thinks it's going to work at some point.
Yeah, it's going to work because he can rip your arms off if it doesn't.
Not wise.
So why not go ahead and try it at the same time?
Either way, he wins.
Laugh it up, fuzzball.
But maybe the most important in terms of a gesture or an action that is a throwback to the original trilogy is Han shooting first.
Shocking.
Yeah.
We didn't get a chance to talk about that in our spoiler review of the movie. What did you guys think about that scene where he kills Beckett at the end of the film?
I loved it. I thought it was perfect.
Yes.
You know,
Exactly.
it kind of...
It'll work.
It almost, threw a wrench in the old movie trope of, okay, the guy's going to talk and do a long monologue right before whatever happens. It just kind of, yeah, whatever, boom. Just like, I'm shutting you down right now. And I thought it was well done. And, of course, you've obviously got the symbolism of, or the parallel of, Han shooting first and just kind of trying to put that back, in the lead, as it were, that Han shoots first.
No! Release him. As you wish.
Yeah, you know what went through my mind first, and this is crazy. I don't know why I didn't connect it to Han shooting Greedo. Instead, I was connecting it to Indiana Jones shooting.
That's what I was going to say.
Right.
It's a double callback.
Yeah.
It kind of is a double callback. You're right. Yeah.
It's the joke that people laughed for 15 minutes in the theater when we saw Indiana Jones the first time. It doesn't have that impact anymore, but that was like one of the greatest jokes anybody had ever seen.
That is correct.
Nobody even knew what happened in the movie next for the next few minutes because we were so busy laughing at what we'd just seen. I really remember that. People don't react in the theater anymore like that. But yeah, that was a double callback as far as I'm concerned, to interrupting the guy by just, I'm going to shoot you now. And also a callback to Greedo. I liked it, but I did think the execution was a little off because they whiffed a little, in my opinion, trying to soften it soften it just a little bit by not actually showing it. And I know that was supposed to be shocking as well, but like our mom was sitting with us one time when we saw it with her, and she said, "Oh, who shot him?" You know, so it happened so fast. I wish they had cut to a shot of the blaster up close with the smoking barrel.
It'll work.
You know, and then cut and then focus in on Han's face, like behind the blaster.
Touch.
Yeah, I mean it's a very typical shot from a Western or something to show you this is the person who pulled the trigger. Because it was a little. It just softened a little bit, but I'm glad they did it. I mean, they did it is the important thing, but it could have been a really killer moment, and that was my problem with part of the tone of the film was they could never decide how adult they wanted to go with some of it. Like sometimes the characters seem merciless and they're joking about killing people and stuff, and then sometimes they seem really soft and like good guys. So. Anyway, but I like they did it. I didn't like the execution that much.
Well, the execution of a killer moment. We're going to. If you think about too, you mentioned a double callback to two Harrison Ford films. Both of them, Lawrence Kasdan wasn't involved in writing A New Hope, but he was involved in expanding on the Han character in the other original trilogy films, and then of course he wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I read an interview with him where he talked about this moment in Solo, and he actually said that in the script he made absolutely sure that this was printed in the script as part of the action description in the script. He said Han Solo did shoot first. When he's describing this moment, that Han Solo did shoot first, and he was very determined that appears in print. And so I thought, wow, this what is he saying to George Lucas?
I don't like
George
this.
Lucas messing with the original trilogy, you know? It's kind of like
or his commentary.
Where you get your delusions,
like those
laser
movies,
brain.
at least Empire and Return of the Jedi, are his movies too. You know, so maybe he's making a statement.
You're gonna
about,
regret this.
You know, they're not just
Don't touch it.
Yeah, they're not just your movies, dude. So.
Yeah.
That's how he sees Han Solo, you know, as the guy who's willing to shoot first.
Right.
So
Yeah.
he may not be the fastest gun,
Wait
but
a second.
he's decisive.
He's shrewd.
And he's willing to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, he's shrewd. He's the old spaghetti western anti-hero type character.
Don't everybody thank me at once.
Let's hope we don't have a burnout.
Okay, let's move on to locations. I was amazed.
I feel the force.
When there are all these names dropped of different planets and cities throughout the film.
Impressive.
And most of them are drawn from expanded universe material. They really made an effort in writing this movie to refer back to the old expanded universe novels and the comic books, even the original Marvel comic book series. For Star Wars Uber fans, a lot of this stuff I wasn't familiar with because I'm not that familiar with the expanded universe now, the Legends.
The Legends universe or whatever.
As Disney has redubbed it. But I'll just mention a few of the places. Coronet City is the city on Corellia that Kira and Han are trying to escape from, and that one appears in Legends novels. And then in the new canonical novel Aftermath, and I think Carillion, you've read that novel, haven't
I've read
you?
that.
Okay, we'll talk more about that novel in a second. Real interesting one is Karita, the Imperial officer who recruits Han into the Imperial Navy, tells them, we're going to send you to Karita and we'll have you flying in no time. And Karita had an Imperial Naval Academy on it in some of the Legends novels. So you're referring again back to a planet that was part of the Empire in the Legends novels. And then this one I want to ask Carillion about specifically.
What is it?
Lando mentions Felucia.
What have we?
Okay.
Whenever Kira comes to Lando to try to get him to do another job for Dryden, to use the Millennium Falcon to make the Kessel Run, Lando says, well, that deal that I did, I handled some business for Dryden on Felucia, and he said that all was forgiven. You know, I don't need to do anything more for Crimson Dawn. Felucia comes from both Clone Wars, and I know you're real familiar with Clone Wars, but also Your number 3 Star Wars movie,
Oh no.
Revenge of the Sith.
If you only knew the power.
Okay, Cillian.
We're never going to let that go, are you?
You cannot escape your
Where
destiny.
does Felicia appear in Revenge of the Sith?
At the end,
Good
they're
grief.
66.
I think I got it.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know this. Is it the plant, the one with all the plants?
Yeah, one with all the big plants. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's where the Twilight Jedi is assassinated by the stormtroopers when
Exactly.
Palpatine implements
Mhm.
Order 66. So it does make an appearance in the films and not just in Clone Wars.
Felt a great disturbance in the force.
Glion Som is a planet that's mentioned several times by Beckett as his home world that he's going to retire to with Val, remember? And that one also is referenced to Clone Wars, I think it appears in Clone Wars. And then, of course, Dathomir.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Darth
Yeah.
Maul's-
The whole
yeah.
Night Sisters story arc. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dathomir is Darth Maul's home planet, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, we're hoping that if there are more movies with these characters, that maybe Dathomir will appear.
Mhm. Yeah, I'd love that. I
In
think
some of
it's
the
great.
future movies.
I think Asajj Ventress and Savage Opress, or however you pronounce his name, all those
Savage
characters.
Opress,
Yeah, all those characters from Clone Wars were from there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe they could make appearances in future standalone films.
Oh, that'd be great.
This next one goes out to the mutt jumpers of the 224th, slugging it out on Limbaum. Keep your heads down and your seals tight, boys.
Okay, there's one that's very interesting for if we think about Star Wars novels. There's a mention of, in fact, where we actually see the planet, the planet of Mimbaum, where Han is fighting in the Imperial Infantry, and he meets Beckett and Val and their gang. That's actually a callback to the first Star Wars novel, Splinter the Mind's Eye. There was Ghost
Right.
written
Oh,
by,
really?
Yes, Ghost
Wow.
written by Alan Dean Foster in, what was it, 1978?
78. Yeah.
Because that was like a swampy, muddy world. I remember from the book. I just didn't remember the name of it.
Yeah. And
So
Luke and
it's
Leia travel
referred
there.
to as almost a mud planet or something in the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, and what Han complains in Solo about more mud if we're gonna go fight
Right.
so they make more mud.
Yeah.
but that novel is the novel that introduced kyber crystals to
Yeah.
Star Wars mythos because
I believe they also set free some slaves in that book that were like Wookiees. They're mining something on Mimbam or something like that. I think there's Imperial mines on there. So the mining with Kessel and stuff kind of comes into play too. But there's like a rebellion of slaves or something a little bit. I mean, a small scale. And they have a couple of those creatures join them. And they fight kind of like Wookiees do in Solo. You know,
That's
throwing people around and ripping their arms off and all that. They're big, powerful creatures. And I forget what the race is called. But anyway.
Yeah.
that's interesting.
I remember
when you
that
think
from the
that's
book.
that's where Han meets Chewie in the film, and they reference the enslavement of Chewie's people. That's an interesting callback. But the kyber crystals in that book, I think, are they're not used to the basis of the lightsabers, but kyber crystals like a
They focus the force or something like that.
yeah
They give you more power if you have one.
yeah.
You can draw more. You can focus the force through them or something like that.
Yeah, but eventually that will evolve into the basis of lightsaber technology in later mythology.
And I can't remember too if in the book there was only one kyber crystal. There was one gem that they were fighting over at the end. So I don't know if there was multiple kyber crystals or just one that was more powerful than the others. But if you remember, the cover has that big red glowing gem on it. I think that's the one they were fighting over, and that's the one Luke uses at the end of the book to heal Leia when she's been
Princess Leia.
slashed up by Darth Vader. Yeah.
Yeah, Luke and Darth Vader actually have a pre-Empire lightsaber battle in that.
Yeah.
And so does Leia. Leia fights him too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She fights with the lightsaber as well. And thinking about other old novels, there are references to the original Adventures of Lando Calrissian novels back from the 80s, right after Empire Strikes Back. There were 3 novels among, the earliest Star Wars novels written Let me see who they were by. L. Neil Smith. And they contain places that Lando mentions in Solo whenever he's recording his Calrissian Chronicles aboard the Falcon. He mentions Sharu, and then later he talks about the Star Cave Nebula and Ocean. Those are all places from those 3 novels that recount Lando's original adventures. So
I'm sure I read those. I just don't remember them.
yeah,
But I'm sure I read them.
I did too, and yeah, it's been so long. But I did on the list that I found online that I was noting. It mentions the one you talked about with Sharu. I've also got one, the Star Cave of Thonbaka, and the other one is the Flame Wind of Ocean.
Yeah.
That's the third one. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the 3. They sound to me like they're kind of companion pieces to the Brian Daley trilogy. You know, you have a trilogy of Lando novels and a trilogy of Han novels that came out after the original films. So those were among the first Star Wars novels. Let's see. And then finally, there is actually a reference to Disney's new theme park, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, in the film. It's referenced twice. L3 mentions at one point when they're trying to leave with Han and Kira aboard the Falcon, she says that Lando couldn't get to Black Spire without her because of her navigation database. And that's actually, let's see, it's the Outer Rim Village in Galaxy's Edge. It's the village that will be the centerpiece of the new Disney theme park. And
maybe we'll run into Lando there.
Yeah, it could be. And the other thing is a character that's mentioned aboard Dryden Voss's yacht whenever Kira is asking one of her fellow co-workers, have you paid enough attention to, what was his name, Doc Ondar? Doc Ondar. Have you paid enough attention to him? This is very much.
Oh, right.
He's a character who's also mentioned. It's supposed to have an important role in the narrative at Galaxy's Edge, because you know that theme park is going to be like an interactive theme park with a storyline that you can get involved in.
He must be a bad guy then.
Yeah, so I'm thinking he's going to become a more important character in some of the stuff outside of the films.
Actually, hold on. Before we go on, I've got one other reference. Again, I don't really know much about this one because this book I haven't read, but on the list I did find that this was not the first appearance of the Maw, of what they were trying to escape from with the Kessel Run.
I was going to ask about the Maw because
it said that it
seems like something that would have been in the Solo books or something.
Actually, it was more recent than that. It said that it was this giant black hole, which is near Kessel, was actually first mentioned in the Jedi Search novel from 1994.
Okay.
Yeah, again, I haven't read that novel, so I'm not familiar with it. But the source I was reading mentioned that.
Is that part of the Jedi Academy novels?
No idea. I don't know.
Yeah, I think maybe that came from there's a Jedi Academy trilogy, maybe. So yeah. Let me ask you guys if you noticed this: the connections between Game of Thrones and the new Star Wars movie. Of course, you got Emilia Clarke, who is a star of Game of Thrones, playing the character of Kira in Solo. But there's also another Game of Thrones cameo that I ran across just randomly on the internet. Do you remember those dogs? Bring the hounds, that guy says.
Yeah.
Whenever those dogs that are chasing Kira and Han when they're trying to escape from Lady Proxima. One of those dogs is a Game of Thrones dog. It is the dog, what is his name? Saxon is the dog's name. He plays Nymeria, the dire wolf that belongs to Arya Stark.
The actual animal. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, he makes a cameo performance. He had to wear a big, thick lycra prosthetic suit and be able to perform ferociously through that suit. So
that's a really odd or obscure one.
Yeah, it's a weird, good performance dog. I love those dogs.
Yeah, I do too. And I want one.
They're awesome.
I like to see more. I love that nom 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 trying to eat through metal and glass. So yeah, those dogs are cool. Worthy of a direwolf. Other characters let's see. You recognize Warwick Davis, the actor
Of
Warwick
course.
Davis, right?
Right.
He played Wicket, the Ewok in Return of the Jedi, and then he appeared in some of the other films. He actually reprises the character that he played in The Phantom Menace in the pod racing scene. He appears in the pod racing scene as a gambler named Weasel.
Yeah, Weasel.
And that's the character that he's now in Solo. He has joined the rebellion with Enfys Nest. And so he's playing the same character, moved from Tatooine to helping out Enfys Nest. So that's
characters.
cool.
Just before we move on, did you mention? Sorry, I spaced out just for a second there. I was looking something up. Did you mention Two Tubes?
No,
Yeah, Benthic Two Tubes is in there.
Right.
But yeah,
the
that
guy
is
with the shower hose on his face.
right. So that is the same character. It's called Benthic Two Tubes. So there's another reference.
Yeah.
Nice.
He was one of the Cloud Riders. Is that right?
I don't. I know he was with Enfys Nest. Of course, we see him on the final scene.
Okay.
Here in a Western showdown scene at the end. He's there all through in the final fight and all that. I'm not sure if we see him. I don't recall seeing him on the actual the train episode during the movie.
So he'll later join Saw Gerrera's group of rebels.
Right.
That appeared in Rogue One. Okay.
I wondered too about Enfys Nest when she refers to her mother wore the mask, and if she had lived, she would be doing what she was doing. I wonder if that's just backstory, or if we were not supposed to know about yet, or if they're referencing somebody. Like it makes it sound like the Mask of Zorro or something like the mask is something they hand down in their family or something, or it's a character they've created to fight for justice or whatever. It's a tradition because her mother wore it. So I wonder if that's just a mention to something that we're not supposed to know about yet, or if that is a reference to something. The origin of that character exists somewhere out there in all this material, but I guess not if nobody's brought it up.
If anybody recognizes it, they can post in the comment section.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that does really. It's so specific, isn't it? It does almost sound like it's got to be a callback to something. Well, yeah. So, and then the Cloud Riders.
Okay.
That Enfys Nest works with and attacking the train heist. Cloud Riders, and I think Carillion mentioned that he heard about this. Do you remember where that name comes from?
Say the name again.
The Cloud Riders.
Oh, the Cloud Riders. I'm drawing a blank at this point. If I mentioned it before, I don't recall.
Yeah, it's actually from the old comics. The original Marvel Star Wars comics. There was a Han Solo adventure, and I think it was comic number 8. It was a Han Solo and Chewie adventure. Where it was kind of like a Magnificent Seven storyline. If you're thinking about Solo as a Western.
It's the one with the rabbit, with the green rabbit.
Yes.
On the front. Yeah.
Yes, it's got the...
Oh, yeah.
It's
wow.
terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That
been
is
40
terrible.
years since I've read these things.
Yeah.
But I do remember certain images and certain covers.
Yeah, the Cloud Riders are a gang that are raiding moisture farms and peasant villages on this planet. And
Thank God they didn't have the angry rabbit in Solo. That would have been a little too much.
Han and Chewie hire a group of mercenaries like the Magnificent Seven to protect a peasant village from the Cloud Riders. And one of the mercenaries is the Green Rabbit that you're talking about. So that's a reference to that comic. And there are a lot of references to other comics that have adventures specifically of Han and Lando in them. Let's see. We heard mention of the Hutt Cartel, right?
Right.
The Tatooine gangster, who's obviously Jabba the Hutt. So you have Han planning at the end of the film to go check out this gangster that Beckett mentioned, who's trying to put together a gang. The Pike Syndicate. Okay, where did the Pike Syndicate come from? Do you recognize that?
I don't.
I think it's from the Clone Wars.
It is. Is it
Really?
Yeah.
From the animated series?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is it
What
Clone-
storyline?
From what I found, you're more familiar with Clone Wars than I am. But they're a gang that were part of Darth Maul's Shadow Collective.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And so when Dryden Voss says that they have an alliance with the Pikes, that's one of the first tip-offs that his overlord is Darth Maul in this film. So, and there are tons that follow that if you were a Star Wars uber fan of the expanded universe, you might already be picking up on who's going to appear at the end of the film. You know, if you were picking up on all these references. So Pike Syndicate was involved with Maul and Clone Wars. There's a mention of, in terms of other bounty hunters and gangsters, Aura Singh.
From Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
And from the Clone Wars.
Yeah, and she also appeared in a comic with Darth Maul. Last year. So there's another hint. No!
Yeah.
Darth Maul is about to appear.
All right.
And there's a mention of the bounty hunter Bosk.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, that was Val mentions him.
Yeah. Val gets mad that Beckett is willing to hire amateurs like Han and Chewie instead of partnering with professionals like Bosk, who's one of the bounty hunters from Empire Strikes Back, right? Is he the lizard dude?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Alan Harris.
Okay.
Was the guy in the suit.
Okay. And then she mentions also the Zan sisters. Now, this one is a real obscure Star Wars reference for, like, uber fans, and I had to do
like most of these aren't.
Well, this one is even more, like, obscure. This seems to be a reference to both one of the novels and some of the old games. The research I did, what they thought that she was referring to is the twin sisters from the novel Shadows of the Empire, whose names were Zan and Zhu Pike, and they are masters of Terras Kasi martial art.
Oh.
And Terras
And that's Kira's reference.
Yeah. Kira uses that martial art to defeat the guy at the beginning of the Kessel Run, right? And she mentions that Dryden taught her this martial art. And so these sisters were criminal mercenaries that used that fighting style in the novel Shadows of Empire, and then the fighting style became most famous, I guess, to big Star Wars uber fans of gameplay in a 1990s game called Masters of Terras Kasi that look absolutely ridiculous. If you've watched videos of gameplay, it doesn't have a very good reputation. It's like known as a really silly game.
Yeah.
You win.
The Force was not strong with this one.
So it's important in that game, but also it's another tip-off of Darth Maul.
Oh, no.
Because one of the lead practitioners of Terras Kasi is Darth Maul.
What?
So,
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So whenever she says that she learns this from Dryden, and he has been talking about his boss that he has to answer to if these things fail, again, we ought to know that Darth Maul...
He probably learned it from Darth Maul,
Yeah. Darth Maul
and then she learned
on
it
his way.
from him.
Yeah.
Ran into Kylo Ren in the bathroom.
Go switch off.
If you want a drink, well, you come right on in. Just watch your step, cause we're all wanted men.
Where do you get the blue milk?
Don't ask, it'll quench your thirst. We all know round here, Solo always does shots first. Singing Yup No, raise your glass. And sing Yup No, sing it with me, Yup No.